Welcome back to Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. I'm Jon Braddock, the founder of The Legacy Vault by My Life and Wishes and the author of the Amazon bestseller, Click Here When I Die. So here's the thing. Most people think estate planning is about documents. But the truth is, it's about decisions made at the worst possible time by people who may have no idea of what you actually wanted. Today's guest doesn't just understand that, she lived it. Joining me today is Sabrina Winters, an estate planning and probate attorney whose entire career was shaped by a deeply personal family experience that changed everything. Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Oh, terrific. Now you're down in North Carolina, is that right?
Yep, in the Charlotte area of North Carolina.
Great. And I understand you've had some pretty good weather down there, so that's nice.
I might be the only one that thinks that. I like it hot, but today's been a great day, so I'll take it.
Well, you're talking to someone that lives in Arizona, so
Yep,
I'll take
you
you.
get it. Get that.
uh, so yeah, let's jump in. What I want to do is I want to go back to about 20 years or so ago.
Yeah,
You told me your career was shaped by something your family went through. Can you walk us through what happened?
sure. And you're right. So I graduated law school in 98, had my license in New York in 99, and shortly after, had an uncle who he had been sick for a while. He had dementia, he was forgetting a lot of things. His business was his life, but he was also just a happy-go-lucky guy. He was just a happy human being. And he literally just figured out all my problems are going to be your problems when I'm not here anymore. And that's literally how he lived his life. And he was known as the candy man in our neighborhood. You know, he'd come to the house, he'd always just show up and there'd be candy in the trunk, and all the kids knew it and divvy out candy. He'd stay for an espresso and then he'd leave. It was just a happy guy. But he did get sick one day and ended up in the hospital. And he never wanted to put anything in writing. I had encouraged him to do it. Of course, I was fresh out of law school, and I don't even think the ink on my license was dry when he got sick. And I had encouraged him for a long time, please get these documents in place. You're not well, and a lot of things have happened. And I was raised by two parents who always had their documents in place. They made changes when life happened, but they always had these documents in place. So he said no, he didn't want to do it. Well, we had a little bit of drama, like most families, and my uncle wasn't officially divorced from my aunt. And it happened 30 years before that they left each other, but they never got a formal divorce. So, under New York law, they were still married. But he had a girlfriend in his life, one that was with him for a very, very long time, and my father, all at the hospital. And the only way to help my uncle survive was through reviving him. And I stood by my father watching him not be able to make the right decision because nobody agreed. He wanted to end his life so that he could have peace, and his girlfriend didn't want that. And other family didn't want it. So that the only option we had was to just keep keep him alive. Well, we had to wait for my aunt to come over from Italy. She was living there. And by the time she arrived to New York, thankfully, he had passed away. But my father carried that guilt with him till 2.5 years ago when he passed. Even talking about my uncle would make him sad and tear him up because he never knew if what he did for his brother was right. And there were a lot of questions surrounding that. And his hands were tied. Nobody helped us. We didn't get the proper guidance, and clearly didn't have the documents in place. And then, of course, I graduated law school. So what didn't I know? Of course, I knew how to settle an estate, right? So, of course, I got some help with that. And it wasn't fun having to settle the estate with family who didn't agree and nothing in writing. because New York decided how everything was distributed, and he was still married. So it was very difficult for my family to navigate all of this. We were confused, we were scared, we were lost. And the worst part about it was that my father loved his brother so much and always helped him, that he carried that questioning and that guilt for so long that it broke my heart and it broke his heart, and he had to carry that for the rest of his life. And that's really what guided me into doing an estate planning and probate law firm, because I didn't want families to have to go through what we did. I want families to be educated. We weren't. I want families to know what their options are to put things in place. We weren't afforded any of that. And his passing could have been way better for us emotionally than it was had he done some planning. And that's in a nutshell why I do what I do.
Wow, I love that. You you touched on so many things that you you know the first comment that you had made about the state deciding what happens, and we experience the same thing without direction. It's you hope you're doing what would be pleasing for the deceased person,
Mhm.
but you have no idea. You do the best you can,
Yeah.
and then when there's other family members involved with no direction, and you made the comment that family can't agree. It's like, whoa, really? Families don't agree on stuff?
Can you imagine?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like I always say, Michelle and I have 6 children between us. And I mean, growing up, they couldn't decide what we're going to have for dinner, couldn't agree
Oh,
on
yeah.
what movie we'd go see. So if we falsely think that, if we die with no direction left for them, that they're going to agree, oh,
Imagine. Yeah. And I think I hear from a lot of clients that, I don't know why I even need to do this because I'm married and everything's just going to go to my spouse, right? You've heard that.
mm-hmm.
And I giggle not out of disrespect, but it's really out of a lack of community awareness. And it takes people like us to really speak in the community and acknowledge that this is a problem and we have a solution. There is a way to avoid all of this. But if you don't know that there's a problem, you're not looking for the solution. So I think it's up to us to bring the problem to light so that we can offer them the solution. And then when you have all of your options and you still decide that you don't want to do anything, then that's on you. And that's a decision that you're allowed to make. But we need to know the options before we can decide.
Oh, absolutely. You know, so I have to ask. Um, so he was married, but technically they'd been apart for 30 years or whatever, but never got a divorce.
Correct.
Um, you I guess twofold. Number one, did they have children
Mhm.
um, of the marriage? And the second part of that would be because best as I get it, if they're married, there's probably life insurance policies, there's other assets, and the beneficiary would have been your aunt
Yes.
at that time. Did she end up getting everything, or was she more or less, you know what, he probably would have wanted the girlfriend to have a little something?
Oh no, there was some drama there. Yes, there was a bit of a soap opera story behind how they were together. But to answer your question, yes, he had two children. And when my aunt had decided to leave him, one of my cousins went to live with her in Italy, and the other one stayed here in the States with my uncle. And that's how they were raised. But they both had a great relationship with the other. They spoke, they visited. But New York decided how everything was going to be distributed. And yes, she ultimately was one of the primary beneficiaries, my aunt.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. After 30 years, it's like all of a sudden, boom. Okay,
Yeah.
I got a little
And they
something.
and the two of them spoke too. There wasn't it's hard to explain. There was still love there. and there still was a certain level of a relationship, but they just didn't live their lives together as husband and wife. They were better apart. Maybe the religion, maybe the Italian heritage, maybe it's just all of the guilt to get divorced because they're old school. My entire family, my siblings and I are first generation Italian. So we were raised Italian Catholic. My family was raised in Italy as Catholics.
Wow.
So that religion runs real deep in their blood, and that could have been one of the reasons she just didn't feel like it was right to divorce him, but I guess leaving him physically was okay. But I'm not, who am I to question that? But I'm guessing that might have been the bottom reason really why she never got a divorce from him.
Yeah. Well, the Catholic Church does not want you to get a divorce. They don't cast any judgment whether you live your lives together or not. It's
Well,
just don't get divorced, right?
yeah, and it's a big deal, and especially if you're raised in a country that's very Catholic and very religious, and I know my family was raised like that, that was probably one of the big reasons why they didn't get a divorce and that they kept their relationship the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the big takeaway here is if there's no documents, that equals suffering, it equals disagreement, and it equals doubt, you know,
Big doubt.
like you're
Yeah.
doing. So
And
I
it
think it's
costs money. It costs money to get it fixed. If you can fix it, it causes emotional stress. It causes people to have to leave their jobs for a certain period of time to go handle all of these things. It snowballs.
yeah. Yeah. It's I
And
always say it's time, stress, and money
yeah.
are the things that get involved. And I don't know about back then, but I was speaking with an attorney not that long ago, who's in New York City area. It's King County. She was
Mhm.
saying that it's at this time it takes 2 years to get on the docket for probate.
I believe it. In my county, one of the bigger counties that I practice here in North Carolina, it takes approximately 4 to 5 months just to have somebody officially appointed as the administrator or executor of an estate. It doesn't matter if you have a will or no will. And just that alone, imagine one of the spouses that passed was the one that handled all the bills. It was the one that wrote the checks and handled all of the finances. And now there's a mortgage that has to be paid, and the surviving spouse has no idea how to make that happen.
Exactly.
Yes. They have no idea how to pay the car loan or what account do we get groceries from. There's a lot of families that still live their lives like that, right or wrong. They are living their lives like that. And it's sad when the surviving one doesn't know what to do or where to get money because now they can't touch anything until they are appointed. And it's really scary.
Yeah, for sure. And it is. Yeah, I see it all the time with couples. One of them handles all this stuff, the other doesn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And what I tell uh, female listeners is that if your spouse is the one that's handling all that stuff and you don't have a clue, you are going to live probably 7 years longer than he is.
Yeah.
So now is the time to get that roadmap and
Hmm.
have that understanding of where things are and what you're going to do.
Well, you wrote a bestseller that talks about that and guides people through that. And it's because it is a big deal to not know what you have, because when you are the only one left behind, you won't know what to do. Like my uncle was pretty private with his things, although my father was very much involved in his life. He even helped him in his HVAC business, doing the plans. My father didn't know everything. So we were still in the same position that so many of my clients were in, that we're trying to dig for assets. Like we don't know where anything is. He was so private. We were looking in cabinets, literally looking in the most obscure places, which I even tell clients now. If you think it's not going to be there because it's too weird of a place, go look there. I've had clients who have found their documents in the freezer
What I
because
call the morbid scavenger hunt.
yes, it's heart-wrenching when you're just looking through things and trying to just grasp at anything to find something when there is a way to be organized and thoughtful and purposeful about it. But if nobody tells you this is a problem, then you won't know that there's a solution to it.
Oh, exactly. You know, as a estate planning attorney, you've seen it, but in the last 11 years now, since I've been, with the Legacy Vault and My Life and Wishes, the stories I hear from people, and I won't go into them, but there was one gentleman who actually had gold buried in his basement. Um,
I believe.
the Pringles can in
Mhm.
the pantry
Yeah.
that was stashed with cash, poker winnings in a bedroom closet that were in a jacket that was going to Goodwill, and fortunately, Goodwill did not get that $15,000 donation.
Yeah.
And the stories go on and on. And what I think so beautiful about your story is that, well, it's not beautiful, but it created the path for you. So here you are, young, you graduate, you pass the bar, you're ready to go, and what area of law am I going to practice? I got to make a decision. Is it going to be corporate litigation, et cetera? And then your world gets turned upside down.
Yeah. It
And
literally was like that. I didn't even like wills and trusts in law school. We had a semester of it, and it was a nightmare. I hated it, and I hated tax. And there's a lot of tax in wills and trusts. I hated all of it. And I saved my 12 elective credits and created my own internship out in Major Crimes Bureau out in Riverhead, Long Island. So I went to a school in Michigan that was trimester. So my very last semester I spent back home on Long Island doing this internship. And all I ever wanted to do was something in criminal law. I almost didn't care which side I was going to be on. It just intrigued me a lot. 1 week in, and I thought, oh my God, this is not for me. I hated everything about it. Other than the cases, I hated the politics that surrounded it. I hated the hours. I didn't like any of it. And I thought, oh boy, since I was 12, this is all I wanted to do. I'm almost 29 now. How do I figure this out? And then I finished the intern, graduated, took the bar. Uncle passed away, and there I was. It was literally handed to me that this is what you were meant to do. This is what you need to do. And I know it sounds corny, but I don't know. I don't really see signs a lot. I'm sure that God's thrown them in my face and I have repeatedly missed them and not seen them. I saw that one, thank God, because that was truly what I needed to see to figure out which way my career was going to go. So it
uh,
took a bad event for that to happen, but it did. And hopefully I've done the right thing for clients and that they've appreciated it. And I've helped enough families kind of go through this so they don't do what we did.
for sure. You've seen both sides, obviously at a young age, the chaos of not having a plan, but then also the clarity that
Yeah.
comes with having one. So you mentioned to me that your father passed just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And that experience was completely different, right?
180 degrees different. So my parents had three kids. Two of us are in the medical field. One's a pharmacist, the other one is a physical therapist assistant. And I'm just the lawyer. So when when we were growing up, there wasn't a lot of secrets. Like my parents didn't hide the liquor cabinet. We didn't even have a cabinet. It was on a trolley right in the middle of the dining room because we were just always open. And that's how we were raised. It's how we grew up. Well, of course, I did my parents' planning when they finally came to North Carolina. I did all their planning. We did some asset protection. We did it all. But there was not a single secret my father kept. Well, there was one that I didn't even know about. But he told me everything. I knew where his accounts were. I knew how much was in there. He kept a sheet. Every time I'd go over to say hello, it didn't matter how many times a week or a month, he'd be like, "Did I tell you about this?" And my mother, as much as she knew everything and they were always involved together, they had their things, right? So my father, I'm going to pay the bills. You can make sure that I wrote them correctly, but I'm going to manage it all. But my mother knew everything. Once I got involved under the hat of an attorney, not just their daughter, my mother's like, well, she's going to take care of it. So she didn't involve herself as much because she knew obviously I would take care of it. And I did, but still, it's very difficult to transact when you are not fully involved in everything. So not only was I involved in all the finances, but all of us, including my siblings, knew exactly what my parents wanted medically. I had taken both of them to go pre-plan their funeral. My mother knew exactly what she wanted. Cremate me, put the best picture you can find of me up there. Do not make a big deal about it. My father said, I don't want to be cremated and I don't want to be buried. I don't want to make a decision. So I said to my dad, well, you don't have to plan. That's your choice. But if you go first, mom's going to cremate you. And it's going to be very simple. And it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be at church and she'll have a nice service for you. But that's what's going to happen. And he said, whatever your mother wants. But what we all were on board with was very different than what my uncle's family was. My father told us every single time, I don't want to live a certain way. I don't want to live like A, B, C, and D. That's not a life for me. I want you to know it's okay with me to end my life if that's what my life is going to be like. And when you address it the way we've addressed it, like we have this conversation at dinner, it's not a big deal for us. We've always talked about it, especially me. I I don't really have a filter, so when it comes to this kind of stuff, so it's always open and out there. But we all knew it. It wasn't just me. I might have only been the one that only knew the financial stuff, but all three of us knew exactly what he wanted. So when he had his stroke at the end of August, he fought the majority of September. But it unfortunately, the stroke hit the part of his brain that told him that he couldn't speak or swallow anymore. So he ultimately starved to death. That was what ended his life. But he always had capacity. He always knew what was going on, probably until the very last week or so. And we, as a family, the four of us, sat with the social worker, sat with the physicians, and on that Friday decided no more. Your father is done fighting. We are done trying to help him. This is what he would do, and we have to honor his wishes. Even though mom was number one, she wasn't going to make this decision without her kids being on board with it. So we did what we had to do. Am I saying that making these documents and getting all of your wishes in place and telling the world what you want is going to make life less sad? No, no. That conversation was horrible. That decision was gut-wrenching. And the last 6 days that it took him to pass away was horrible. However, we are not living with guilt. That was my father's final gift to us, is that we knew what he wanted. We made the hard decision, and we don't have guilt over that. My father had it for over 20 years. We don't have that. And that's what families need to realize is what are you leaving as a memory to your family? When you are no longer here, are they going to remember the horrible event of your passing? Or are they going to remember more what you did for them to make that easier on them and less stressful, less sad, less burdensome? That's what my father remembered. That's not what we remember. And I think it's a big deal. I think people need to know that.
It is, what an amazing story and a blessing that, your father and mother were that open and have those conversations. And of course, with your background, you could help make sure these things happen because, you know, what I say to people all the time is, what do you want the experience to be like for your family after
Right.
you're gone? And it can be one of chaos and stress and guilt and those kind of things. or it
Yeah.
can be the simple gift of clarity. And
Yeah,
that
you
gift
built
of,
it.
yeah, that gift of clarity eliminates the added stress. It eliminates guilt. It doesn't take away sadness and grief. I mean, they'll always be there. That's part of the healing process. We don't want to change that.
Right. Grief
But
is the gift for loving somebody. And
exact.
that's the gift because if you didn't have grief, your love wasn't that deep.
Mhm. So you've built your firm very intentionally, and it's different.
Yeah.
You actually greet clients with, it's a great day. How can we make you smile today?
Yeah.
Um, Talk about your practice a little bit and how you operate a little differently than other
Yeah.
firms.
Well, estate planning is it's not transactional. And I'm not going to go to court and get you out of a ticket. I'm not going to do a closing and forget that you exist. Those are transactional and those are important and those are the times that you have to have an attorney that knows what they're doing. But estate planning is relationship based. You're not going to tell me your life story or the things that you're embarrassed about that you don't like about your kids if you don't feel comfortable in the surroundings that I've invited you into to talk to me about this. And I am very anti the traditional attorney's firm. It's just never been me, and I have to be me in my own practice, otherwise it's not going to work, right? Just like you have to be you in what you do, otherwise it doesn't come off as genuine. And I think when people call my office or any attorney's office that handles these things, it's a hard call. I mean, I have clients who call because somebody just passed away and I don't know what I'm doing and they're crying on the other end. So if there's not a warm person answering that call, it's not going to be a comfortable experience for them. And I don't want them to start off a relationship with me and my team that feels cold. So when they call the office, it is always, it's a great day at Sabrina's office. How can I help you? Anything that sounds like that is acceptable. If it doesn't sound anything like that, I've let people go. Because to me, you can't teach somebody warmth. You can't teach somebody a kind, loving bedside manner. It's either who you are or you're not. And my team is that. The person that greets my clients for the very first time they call the firm is exactly that. And clients comment on it all the time. I love Isabella. She's so nice. She's been so helpful, and I love the way she speaks to me, and she's been so amazing. Like, that's what I want clients to remember because they used a lawyer, right? You don't always get those adjectives when it describes attorneys, right? They're not always that nice, unfortunately. And I know that's throughout many careers, but so yeah, so we start off like that, and I also intentionally have my firm not feel stuffy. And there's nothing wrong with stuffy. But they're coming to me to share some family secrets. They're coming to me to talk about not leaving, not being here anymore and leaving their kids with no parents. It's a really hard conversation. Or I have plenty of times where all of the family is in from out of state and they came to see me right after they went to the funeral home. They need, well, I like my clients to feel like they're on somebody's a friend's porch just talking. I want them to feel comfortable. And if they don't feel comfortable, I'm not really going to be able to help them the way that I want. So it's really from the beginning that they call me kind of through the process that we just want you to be comfortable and know that we get it. I've been there. I've had a dog in this fight, as they say. And I know your questions before you even think you have that question to ask me. Because I've not only lived it, but I've built a practice based on not having you do what my family had to go through.
Right. And asking questions that, the average person is never going to think of. When I tell you I want to do this, this, and this, you're going to say, but what about
Right.
this, and this? Which, as I tell people who think, oh, I can do this online by myself, it's like, no, because that AI ain't smart enough to
Yeah.
ask you real world questions and what you
Right.
really think and feel. But
Hmm.
but what I see about you and your practice is your approachability, your emotional safety, and relationship versus transactions. And
Yeah.
I think that's so different than what a lot of estate planning attorneys. Uh,
And I think it, like I said earlier, you have to be who you are and you have to be genuine and you can still be a kind human being attorney and not do the things that I do. You could be very different from me, but still have those great qualities. And that's because I'm not for everybody. And I mean, I've had clients say, "Oh, you're from New York. I loved you the minute I saw you," right? But then I've had other clients who said, I felt like I wanted to be with a woman because you probably are going to understand me a little bit better. And whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter because that's how the client felt.
yeah.
And that's what we have to remember. We have to service our clients and meet our clients where they are, not where we are.
And if people watch the video that you have on your story and about what you do,
Mm.
the warmth and compassion shines through. And it's like talk about doctors, right? There are phenomenal doctors out there.
Yeah,
Some of them have a great bedside manner, and some don't. And there's phenomenal attorneys out there that
sure.
have a great bedside manner, and there's others. They're still great attorneys. They just might not be as easy to talk to.
And again, maybe that's what I need, right? I might
Yeah,
not want somebody who's all mushy and kind and understanding of me and makes me feel comfortable. Maybe I need somebody who's going to be in my face, very direct, very cold. I want to get through this. I don't need that in my life. I don't need that kind of attorney, and that's great. That's why, you got to be yourself because I think there's plenty of work for every attorney in the community. I don't think there's any reason why we need to be stealing clients from others and being dirty. If you feel like you're comfortable with me, great, I would love to help you. But if not, I refer clients to other attorneys a lot because
yeah.
I may not be the right one for you, but you know what? I want to get you in the right hands of somebody.
You're too nice, Sabrina. I put me in touch with a drill sergeant,
Oh,
someone who just tells
well,
me what to do.
well, when I got to put my foot down, I do, and I do guide my clients in the direction they need to go. But you don't have to be cold in
Yeah,
order to get somebody to do something. You can still deliver it in a kind manner, but other clients want it differently. They want the delivery very differently, and that's okay because there's plenty of good attorneys out there for everybody, and we just have to be ourselves and
yeah.
we'll make a good living and
Oh,
still do the community things we're supposed to be doing as public
um,
servants.
absolutely. And you make a point. That there's plenty of business out there. There's a lot of attorneys, and there are because last I checked, we got about I don't know 300 million people on the planet, and well, no, we got about 300 million in the United States. So cut it in half, take all the
Yeah.
kids out, you got 150 million out
Let's call
there,
it a lot.
and everybody is going to die.
Right.
And so it just becomes our jobs is to make sure that the 50+% out there who haven't done any planning yet
Yeah.
understand what the nightmare can potentially look like for their family and get them to go see an attorney,
Mhm.
whichever one best fits.
And remembering that it's not just about our stuff, right? Estate planning is just the umbrella. And underneath there is how do I get rid of my stuff? But like in my personal situation, it was all of the healthcare documents. All the wishes for healthcare decision making wasn't in place. And yes, we're all going to die, but there is a likelihood that those other documents are going to be needed before that. And how is that going to be for somebody? Like my father and our family really felt like my uncle knew what was going on. He was always awake. His eyes were always open, and we always felt, and we could have been wrong, but we always felt like he knew what was going on. He just couldn't communicate it. And that's a horrible feeling to
Yeah.
know that somebody's going through that. And I think my father knew what was going on. He never really lost his mental capacity. He just was unable to communicate anymore and swallow. And just being able to put somebody out of their suffering under their terms is is by far one of the biggest gifts that you can give somebody, to say, yes, I'll do that, and to actually do it. So, we hope my uncle didn't suffer as much as we think that he did, and that he didn't know as much as we think he knew at the time that it was going, but we'll never know. But there is one part of the story I did not share with you. There's only one part of that whole passing that my father knew that he made the right decision. And that was where he was ultimately buried. My uncle lived not far from a Friendly's ice cream, which is no longer. Well, I think there's like one or two maybe on Long Island, but the majority are out. But it's a great ice cream place, and they had really great food. And he used to joke that he wanted to be buried across the street in that cemetery at the top of the hill, so he could watch people come and go for the remainder of his eternity. Well, that's exactly where my father buried him, although it wasn't a Friendly's anymore, it was a paint store, but people were still coming and going, and he could still watch them every single day. And that's kind of the joke that I have in my life about that I like to remember, is that his final resting place, at the very least, is exactly where he wanted. And that's one thing that my father did not have to question himself about for 20 years.
It's a great story. Oh, wow. Yeah. Just circling back to those other important documents beyond the stuff, you touched on, you know, your uncle was, you thought he was there, but he couldn't communicate, and dad the same way. What people need to understand is those documents contained within that estate plan, they're designed to give you a voice when you don't have one.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's such a beautiful thing because, like you say, those documents come into play for an awful lot of people. And as a good friend of mine always says, you know, let's hope you'll be one of the few lucky ones that just dies,
Mhm.
because most of us will slowly fade away.
Right.
And
My
that's where,
grandmother died at almost 101 in her sleep. The
uh,
most perfect way to pass away. Yes, it was really amazing. That woman, well, she was living in Italy, and she drank red wine every day, every night with a meal. If you turned your head, she might even steal your wine. But she ate her dinner, she had her wine, she went to bed and passed away in her sleep. It's the only one that I know that's ever done that.
if I could sign up for that
Right.
right
I think
now,
we all would, right?
I'm in. Right.
Yep.
Oh,
I know.
absolutely. So for someone that's listening to
Yeah.
us, feeling this, what should they do first? What's step one? What conversation should they have? What documents actually matter most?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is to call an attorney. Find one that handles estate planning. I'm a big proponent of staying in your lane, and there's a lot of moving parts to estate planning. Statutes change, documents change, conversations change. Just make sure that the attorney that you're using knows what they're doing with estate planning. Make that phone call. I just tell my clients, you did the hardest part so far. The hardest part is actually picking up the phone and making an appointment and coming to the appointment. That is it. The rest of this, we got you. And we're going to hold your hand the whole way. We're going to guide you. That's the very first thing. Do your due diligence, find the attorney that can help you make that phone call and show up. If the attorney knows how to handle an estate planning client, they're going to know exactly how to process this for you. I don't tell my clients to prepare anything before they come see me, but that's just me. Lots of lawyers, and it's not, I think it's a great idea, just not what I do, is they have them fill out some forms and bring it with them to the appointment. I like to elicit that information myself through our conversation. I don't do Q&A. I'm horrible at that. I'd rather just sit, my single clients come, I usually sit next to them, so tell me, what made you pick up the phone and call and make an appointment with somebody like me today? Are you worried about something? Did something just happen? Is it just simply been on your to-do list and you got around to it? So there might be an attorney that you choose that may want you to fill out some forms. Do it. There's a reason they're asking you to do that. You're going to have to trust the process, regardless of who you use, because ultimately your assets become important, how they're owned, the dynamic with your relationship with your kids, their relationship with each other, spouses of your children, that relationship comes into play. Um, so I usually just say, come to your appointment, we're going to have a conversation, and then it's going to be on me to get what I need from you, and it's going to be painless because that's what our goal is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Uh, so one of the things we talk about a lot on the show, even when people have documents, and as
Yeah,
we touched on earlier, families still struggle to find things, access things, or even know what exists.
right,
The estate plan itself, um, my words, no one else's. Um, they direct what should happen with everything, but it doesn't tell everybody where everything is and how to find it, and they still
right,
get hung up on the scavenger hunt.
exactly.
So it's not just about having your plan. Have your plan, but make sure it's usable.
That's right. Don't keep it a secret. Like you have to talk to the people that might end your life. Like they might have the job to do that. Imagine being called on to make that decision, and that's the first you ever knew that that person chose you to make that decision. You never had a conversation with them. You have no idea what their religious beliefs are. You have no idea what they would have done for themselves. It's a really bad position to be in. So I always tell my clients, before we finalize these, can you please have a conversation with your healthcare agent, with your executor, with your trustee? Let them know. Because when I was doing the plans for my parents, and like I said, everything I do with my clients, I've lived it personally in my own experience. I chose to be very last out of my siblings to make a medical decision. Now, my parents always knew that it didn't matter who was number one, that we would always talk and always have that conversation. And we always got along and agreed when it came to that. But I wanted to be last because I didn't think emotionally that I could handle saying, yeah, there's no more medical things we need to do, just end it. I didn't personally think I could do that. And I was honest with my parents because I felt they needed my honesty. So we did the order in which they felt comfortable, but I required myself to be last. Well, we have these documents, and thank God, knock on wood, everything was great. And then my mother needed a pacemaker, and it was not your truth because we got to do things big in my family. So she couldn't just have this episode like on a Tuesday. She had to have it on the weekend, and we had to bring her to a hospital that didn't have the ability to put in a permanent pacemaker. So her heart stopped several times, even in the middle of a procedure, and I never left her room. I was shocked. I was beyond shocked at myself, and I know my family was, certainly my siblings. But it's not in what they were doing was in her room. It wasn't in an operating room. So we were all allowed to be in there. And of course, my sister, my brother were there because they knew the right questions to ask. But I sat at my mother's feet and I held my mother's feet and I said, it's going to be okay, Ma, you're going to make it. It's going to be okay. And I never left the room. And then when everything was fine and I knew she was okay, I left the room and I had my own breakdown. But I surprised myself in being able to do that without letting my emotions get the best of me. Even now, like when I talk about it, I get a little emotional because, it's my mother, right? And I watched her heart stop in front of me and I still never left the room. So, but I couldn't tell my parents anything otherwise than put me last because I can't do this. But with that episode, I knew that I could do it. And I knew that when it was time for my father and us to, make that decision for him, that I was, I knew I was doing the right thing, and I knew that I could do it. And of course, I come from a very close, loving family. I'm one of the few fortunate ones, and I realize that. But we all supported each other. We all knew what we needed to do, and we will always be there for each other. And it's not going to be any different for us. But we know that because we've unfortunately, but fortunately, have had that experience already to see how we react and how we do things. And we did just fine. I don't want it to happen again. I would rather mom go in her sleep happy. But if need be, I think we're going to be fine. But I know that I'm one of the lucky ones.
Yeah. What a great story.
Yeah.
Um, so your stories really highlight something most people, I think, maybe don't realize, is that estate planning isn't about preparing for death. It's about protecting the people you love from chaos and uncertainty when
Yeah.
life takes its unexpected turns.
Right.
So before we wrap up, two final questions. If you could leave our listeners with one thought, what would it be?
I'm going to leave it for the attorneys that are listening. That we've got one mouth and two ears for a reason. That sometimes we just need to listen before we speak. The more you listen to your clients, the better you're going to be able to help them. Let them talk before you talk. It's important.
I like that a lot. And finally, how can our audience connect with you if they're in your area or they just want to reach out, they like your style, if they have any questions?
Sure. So I am licensed in New York and I'm licensed in North Carolina. I don't practice in New York anymore, but it was my first bar and my first license, so I'll never let that go. I can help anybody in North Carolina with estate planning. I can also help anybody who's lost a loved one who resided in North Carolina, regardless of where they live. So I'm licensed in North Carolina only. And they can certainly visit the website. It's very simple, sabrinawinterslaw.com. And I am on all of the social medias as well. They can find me through Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, North Carolina State Planning on Facebook. They'll find me there.
Oh, fantastic. And for the audience, I will have all of Sabrina's information down below in the show notes where social accounts, and feel free to connect with her. Thank you so much, Sabrina. I really enjoyed having you on with us today.
Thank you for having me. Great show and great platform. Good
Uh,
job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. If this episode made you think about your own situation, please don't ignore that, because the cost of doing nothing is almost always paid by the people you love the most. So, as always, remember, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.